All right, welcome in. It is Conversation Monday here, and we bring on a very special guest. He lives out in the cheese wonderland that is Wisconsin now, but he is originally from Belfield, North Dakota. He runs one of the cooler sites on Facebook. It is the Throwback T-shirt guy. Its name's real name is Scott Thompson. It's goes back and looks all the old towns when it was Class C. Probably your dad, maybe your grandpa or grandma or mom played for him. I know there's a few on here that I've seen already, just scrolling through. And if you go follow, you're going to learn a thing or two about these towns in North Dakota geography. So Scott, welcome on. It is an honor to have you.
Thanks, Dylan. It's an honor to be on your podcast. I get a kick out of it when somebody says it's an honor to have you. It's like, no, I appreciate the time. Thank you for the interest in this.
Yeah, well, it is because when you're a nerd like I am, and you grew up watching, like, looking through your dad's high school yearbooks or your mom's high school yearbooks, and you see these old towns like the Almont Eagles. The one memory I have is my dad. He's from Richardson. And he played for the Rebels
Okay.
back when they were just Richardson, and his senior year they beat him 96-12.
Oh, God.
and and then there's so many other ones that I didn't even know about, like the one I was just looking while we were talking before, and then we had some connection issues, was the Versipi Tigers, and turns out that is right close to where I am in
Yes.
Dickinson. It's right by the Green River. And how did you find out about that team?
About Versipi,
Yeah.
actually, it's funny you should mention that. My dad actually helped me out with that one a little bit before he passed away last June. Um, I think I was back home in November 2021, and he kind of, he wasn't really interested in high school sports and that sort of stuff like I was, but he took an interest in it when I started this 3 years ago, and he said, you should do the Versipi Tigers, and I said, Versipi Tigers, I haven't heard of that one. And he said, oh, that's a little ways north of Taylor. And I said, never. That's a town? And he said, yeah, that's a way. So we spent an hour or so looking it up on Google Maps, trying to figure it out. And he had kind of narrowed it down to I believe it's a Fisher sand and gravel scoria pit that's out there that you really can only get to from the north. So the road travels north to south, and we found a kind of a roundabout in there where you thought, okay, that must be where the school bus came or where traffic came in the 50s and 60s. And yeah, so he was pretty certain that was the site. I don't know how he knew of that one, and it was a difficult find. From there, I had to go through what were the school colors. I had no idea, and I was guessing green and white because of Versipi when I pieced together Ver and Sippy for the Green River, and I was completely wrong. My one of my high school friends, actually, his dad played in the Class C for the Freiburg Panthers in the 1950s, and he still had an old tournament yearbook or handbook. And he sent me a picture, and I said, Freiburg Panthers. I said, that was the district tournament. I said, you got to find a Versipi. Is there a Versipi page in there? Were they in the same district? He said, yes. And he turned the page, and of course, on there, I was lucky enough. Some schools didn't put them, but it had, the name and like their school song and that. And it said school colors, red and white. So then I knew, red and white Versipi Tigers. So that's the story.
Huh, that is crazy. So is the school still there now, or is that already or is it just the Fisher Scoria pit?
The school is gone. There is an old barn that's still there. So somebody that actually ordered a Versipi Tiger shirt, and I should have those done within the next 3 or 4 weeks. He lives just north of that. So he said the Versipi barn is located to the south end of his property. And so it's in pretty rough shape, but that was a barn constructed by some locals, and that's where they played their basketball games. So I asked him if
Oh,
there was a
okay.
court or anything in there, and he said no, that stuff's long gone. The hoops are gone, but that was where they played. So that's on close to the school site. So that way that so I told him, I said, well, I'm going to hold it to you when I come out there to make my visit to Versipi. I'm gonna drive over to there and check it out.
Yeah, that is awesome. Or even like what you just mentioned, the Freiburg Panthers. I didn't know Freiburg had a school either, which is I don't know if they're on here. don't remember seeing it. But what were their colors?
They were the
And where were
Panthers.
where were their school, or where were they play their games at? I guess I've never really been too much into the town of Freiburg, but
Well, I don't know if I'd go so far as to call it a town these days, but
yeah.
it's yeah. I remember them. So they were a grade school in the 80s, and I went to Catholic grade school in Belfield, and they were always blue and white, royal blue and white. And in this back before they closed the high school, they were actually listed in that same district tournament book as red and blue, or blue and red. So I think it was blue jerseys with red numbers to kind of differentiate them from Medora, who was blue and white. So that was a way to
Oh,
mix it up,
okay.
because they didn't have two uniforms. You didn't have, I mean, these schools didn't have money for home and away jerseys back then. That was a luxury. So there was one photo I had. I think my sister had come across this from somebody who helped me out with that. With Demoris. It was Demoris High School. I mean, they were known as Medora. I think their jerseys even said Medora, but officially it was Demoris High School. And the picture of the two players from Freiburg and Demoris had one in early color photography, had a picture in green and white, or green and gold. And I said, well, how can somebody's got the colors wrong if they're green and gold? So they're one's blue and white. These towns both insisted they're blue and white. So I ended up making another couple of phone calls, and finally had somebody who looked at the picture and said, "Oh, I can tell you why that is. That's because our jerseys were both blue and white for the championship games, or white and blue. So they had white jerseys and blue trunks. We had to borrow the jerseys from the team that won the third place game, so that way we didn't look the same." So that was why. That was why in this little picture where the kids are holding their trophy up, like, and he said that's why there was a different color jersey there. I'm like, oh my gosh, some of this stuff you can't even make it up. It was just, but the Freiburg gym. So my dad was on the school board in Billings County when they built the new school somewhere in the 80s, early 80s. And I think it was open until then, somewhere in the 90s, and then closed, just the declining enrollment. So they had a nice gym, really nice facility there. I think the water pipes froze up, and it kind of ruined the building, and now it just sits there. And but so the old school, I have no idea where they played. Now Demoris, I can tell you, their building still exists in downtown Medora. I forget the name.
Oh, the community center, I bet.
It's
Because I know there's a gym in there.
I think you're right on that. The community center, kind of behind the kind of on the Main Street area.
Yep.
If you go up on the second floor, there used to be a wood floor, and you can tell it's a Cracker Jack box. I mean, I don't think it's 50 feet from one end to the other. And I was shocked as a kid to go in there, and they had lines painted on the floor. And as we were moving the chairs around for the 4M review, I realized this is a basketball court. How can this be a basketball court? My dad said, "Well, that's where they played. That's where Demoris played." And I said, "I mean, you can, honest to goodness, you can play ping pong in the thing practically if you set a table in there. There's just not much room." And I thought, well, how there was no regulation court size back in the day, so you were really either, if you could construct your team based on the size of your gym. If you're a fast break team and like to score a lot of points, you're gonna have a hard time doing it when you basically at half court while you're shooting a free throw.
So Medora played their games where they did the 4M review.
Yeah.
So it's not even the community center.
No, it's not. It's not. So the school today is obviously much different. So they play in the community center. They've got the big gym. No, I'm talking your old school. I'm talking 1950s Medora. That's where they play. And so if you're in that building, I think that's where they shoot or they do the what is it? The Teddy Roosevelt.
I can't remember what it is now, but
what they call it. But if you go in there and take a look around, I believe it's on the second floor. I'm going off of memory when I was a kid. I haven't been in there in a long time, and sometime when I'm in Medora in the summer, I got to find somebody who has a key to it and get me in there.
That's amazing. I'm mind blown by that, because I've been in that place a few times, going to the show and the shows they have there, and it's that next time I'm there, I'm gonna have to find a way to get similar to you, like get up there and go check that out, because and then back to the Freiburg of talking about swapping shorts, and I thought that it was stopped with I remember when my dad played back in the 70s. I don't know if it was when you were playing, if it was already changed, but it was always even numbers white jerseys were even numbers, colored jerseys were odd numbers,
Yes.
and now they just had the one jersey, and my brain is just spinning in circles right now, Scott.
Well, hey, I joke around. So when I was a sophomore on junior, I think I was still playing JV for Belfield. I don't remember how the coach gave out jerseys, if it was just show up at 4 o'clock and I showed up 10 minutes late, or if it was my last name, alphabetical order. I don't know. But I tell you, in 1987, I had the baggiest pair of shorts ever. And I had to cinch those things up to get them to stay up. And I was just panicked every time I would play, because I would try and be really sneaky and kind of pull my shorts up when they were slipping down a little bit, right? They hung down to my knees, and I was razzed pretty good in Scranton. The fans there were giving it to me really good in the game, and I made some free throws at the end. But I heard that, I don't know if they were chanting baggy shorts or kind of making funny, pull up your shorts, number 21, and whatever they were doing. We won the game, and I joked around years. My teammates would poke fun of me, and I think at a reunion a few years ago, I told them, I said, "Hey Scott, yeah, remember those baggy shorts that you had?" And I said, "Yeah, I do." I said, you guys like to think the Fab Five started the baggy shorts era back in the late 80s, when Chris Webber and Jalen Rose and those guys were starting wearing the baggy shorts? I said, no. Jalen Rose came to one of my games in Scranton and said, "Oh, those shorts are dope. I got to get me some of those baggy shorts."
You stole my joke. That's exactly my next question was going to be. Is I think the Fab Five stole that from you,
Yes,
the baggy shorts.
That's
but
what I tell people. I'm like, yeah, I said, if only I thought of the black socks, though. That was too much for me.
That's well, and black socks are in. I don't even
Are.
think I own a pair of white socks anymore.
They're totally in too.
But I know when I was playing, coaches would always make fun of us for wearing black socks and asked if we were like 80 years old. But
right.
but how did this idea come about of going through finding old vintage logos and kind of creating this page? What was how did you come up with this idea?
It really started. I can go all the way back to being about 11 years old in, I think, 1980, 82, I think, watching the Class B basketball tournament in March. We were calving season, and I wasn't a super into ranching like my dad. I knew that was important, but he would turn on the TV for that tournament, and he was not into basketball himself. But I got to kind of enjoy that, and I liked the nicknames and the logos. We had a black and white TV, but it was fun to see. And the championship game that year, I believe, was Halliday Wolverines and the Sargent Central Cadets. And so I had Dad get a map out and look. I had no idea where Sargent Central was, but I just thought the Cadets was a cool nickname. And Dad let me know that I should probably cheer for Halliday since they were a little closer to where we lived. But it started then. So when I got into high school, obviously being the Belfield Bantams, we had some history with that name. And it was just a unique name. We weren't the Cougars or the Tigers or the Bobcats. The Bantams is a unique name. And when you talked small town Class B hoops in North Dakota, when you said the words Bantams, everybody knew you were talking about Belfield. Much like Glen Ullin. If you said the word Rattlers, yep, you knew Glen Ullin. Brickmakers, you knew that was Hebron. And very few teams that you can do that with. And so I that kind of stayed in my head when I went to college in Grand Forks in 88 to 92. I was exposed to more teams on the eastern part of the state, especially that northeastern corner. And they covered northwestern with Minnesota too. So I learned a lot about the Hallock Bears and the Pembina Wildcats, Nittany Indians, who became the North Border Bandits. And so it was, so I knew them. So after that, fast forward, I moved to the Twin Cities in 1992 and went back to my sister's graduation in 96. And half the logos in the gym that were there from when we were in our district 29 had all changed. And I asked her, well, who's the Nighthawks? Well, that's Heading or Scranton. I said, why is Trinity in Class B now? When did that happen? That didn't make any sense. So I always thought, like, gosh, we're really watching history disappear before our very eyes. And I was kind of a naive kid thinking, well, this is how it's always going to be, and the reality was this was never how it always was. There was a Freiburg school. My dad remembered the Freiburg kids coming to Belfield because their school had closed, and this stuff had been going on a lot longer than I thought. And So I got to fast forward all the way to 2015 when I decided to have somebody. So Belfield had now entered into the co-op with Southard in 2007, and
Yep. Yep.
I see your Michigan banner behind you. I'm a huge Michigan football fan, and our school colors or our co-op colors were changed to navy blue and old gold, which is Notre Dame. And
Yeah. I
I,
know
I,
it was this
I,
close.
yeah, I joked and said no thanks. I'm not wearing any of that. If you had gone maize and blue, I'd be all over it. I'd probably have 1,000 Hard River Cougars shirts, but no, that's a pass on Notre Dame. So I thought, well, 2015, I had lost my only Belfield Bantam shirt that I had left. I think I had a jacket that was stolen in college and I never found it. And that stuff just gets old. And of course, I'm not wearing a T-shirt from when I was a junior in high school. Um, and so I had a logo done. I worked in advertising and had a couple of graphic designers that I knew, and I asked them to fix up our bantam. And one of the three was just fabulous. And that's the current one. You've probably seen on some shirts out there. And so that was 2015. I didn't do anything with it. I mentioned it for a reunion that didn't happen in 2018. And finally, it was 2018, I believe. I just decided, well, if nobody's going to buy these, I'll just try and print them up and go from there. I printed 12 shirts knowing that I would keep two. And if I could sell 6 or 7 of the 10, I would break even. And that was at the point all I wanted to do. I just thought I'm some Lone Ranger. Nobody cares about this. Nobody's interested in it. And it took me a while, but I sold 10 and I ended up doing about 24 more. Decided I'd get a little cheaper per shirt rate to print some up, and took me another year or so to sell those, if not 2 years. And then March of 2020, I had the trifecta of things, I guess, that kind of happened all at once. I lost my job and had nothing but time on my hands. We of course had COVID going on, and I mean, I don't like to talk about the other one. It was more a personal situation, but it's three things at once. And I was kind of forced to I got to make some money here. Um, and a lot of confusion going on. And North Dakota is one of those places that life just went on during the pandemic. I know that, it's just, I'm not sure this could have been successful anywhere else. People just kind of, well, okay, well, there's a pandemic going on. Okay, well, that's great. We got to go feed the calves. That's kind of North Dakota. Everybody else, my state, Minnesota, had shut down. Wisconsin was in a shutdown, and so I started the Facebook page in April of 2020, and I posted the Belfield Bantams and thought this is where I'm going to go with this. And I had orders. I mean, within hours and days, I had 85 to 100 orders for those shirts, and I thought, well, this is maybe the way to do it. And from there, it
Yeah,
turned.
and well
Go ahead.
now the Bantams are back
Mm-hmm.
with the new 3-class system. The co-op for just basketball now is uh is ended. They're still co-oping with football and every other sport, but I wouldn't be shocked if we see a 3-class for volleyball as well. I think that's going to be coming down the line.
Yep.
That's probably what's next, but it's it'll be interesting. I don't know how closely you follow North Dakota high school sports much, but what do you think of the new 3-class system?
I don't. I think there's no perfect system. I do follow it. I was somebody asked me if I'd heard that the Bantams were coming back, and I said heard that the Bantams were coming back. I pretty much led the charge to bring them back. I was in contact with some alumni and friends back home, and the superintendent there, Darren Curley, and really trying to make an effort. And to be fair to South Art, I always wanted the South Art Eagles to come back too. If you're going to split the co-op, I understand the reasoning behind it. Um, and I hate to pick on Trinity and Shiloh Christian, but it's those schools are. I get you can complain. You can say the enrollment is what it is, and go the enrollment base. But when you're a private school in a town of what's Dickinson 25,000 now.
Right now it's about 20.
20.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Peak of the oil boom, it got to about 30, but now that's long past. So I would say it's right around 20.
Yeah, and you can't compare that to a couple of towns of 800 and maybe 500 people who, because their schools are, Southard gets some overflow from Dickinson, and it just, when they redrew those regions again, and I thought, well, they're one of the co-ops that went from bad to worse. We literally traded Hettinger, Scranton, and Mont Regent in exchange for Shiloh Christian, and it's just like this was never Class B hoops. So I like what they've done. I think I give credit to schools like Bismarck St. Mary's, who, despite their enrollment numbers, will play double A. And I guess so. It's never perfect. I mean, Watford City's kind of a conundrum too. Like, what do you do with a town of 8,000 people? That's a giant school in Class B, but they can't compete with Williston. That's certainly not their target. And it's affected schools like them. I talked to somebody from Watford City area last night, and he said we can't get any kids to go out for basketball. They've seen the scores. It's going to take several years to bring back the pride in Watford City basketball, because kids are just turned off by it. I think the boys game a couple of years ago, they got beat by somebody by like 70-19, and nobody wants to be a part of that. So I think it's a step in the right direction. I really wish they would have gone A, B, and C. I think double A, and B is ridiculous. Just nobody's expecting the Class C team to beat a Class A team, or to probably maybe not even be competitive. But that's not the point. The point is you're going to give some kids the opportunity to play sports when they might not have, because the schools are busy co-oping to try and compete. Well, you've got 3 or 4 kids that can play basketball, and 2 or 3 football players impersonating basketball players sometimes. And I mean that nicely. I want the kids to go out. And so the fact that a co-op dissolved means more kids from Belfield are going to play, and more kids from South are going to play. So I hope that's a win for some of these schools.
Yeah, and for me, my perspective is, and I actually graduated from Trinity, and I coach football there now, and it was one of those things that, like, if this 3-class system ever happened, I knew Trinity was going to be in that middle class. It is what it is, and I think some of this is a lot of these small towns, or these co-ops, they've been rivals for so long, and they've butted heads, and they've never been able to push that aspect aside. And I think, especially with this 3-class system, which some of these teams or towns have been clamoring for years, and they think that's going to solve their problems, I've watched you go through 5 coaches in 5 years. I think what they really need to do is, if they want this to work and they want to be competitive in these class systems, because there's some that I'm sorry, but you're not going to be, you won't be competitive, because you guys are, the school board, the administration is so dysfunctional. It'll give them a good opportunity to take a step back, have those hard conversations, look in, like, what do we have to do? How can we establish a winning culture, a positive attitude within the schools, to where we can get good coaches to stay? Because you see it everywhere too, where there's so many good coaches, or teams get good coaches, but they get a little bit of success, and then it's not good enough, and then they push them out, and the coach just gets worn out and leaves and goes somewhere else. I think that's the biggest thing, is just establishing a culture, and getting everybody from AD, administration, school board, all aligned with what your vision of the right school is, or how the school can be successful.
Mm-hmm. Correct. I agree somewhat with a good chunk of that. Don't get me wrong, but it's, again, to compare. You drive by the what is it, Sanford Stadium in Bismarck, that Shiloh's football stadium by 94.
Yep.
Yeah, you can't compare that to a bunch of farmers and ranchers seeding the field at Belfield for the Hard River Cougar Co-op. I mean, there's just no comparison. There is no monster donor who's going to stick their name on Belfield's football stadium. And so that,
which I will say, has the nicest grass that we've played on.
They do a very good job of that. I'm not disparaging Belfield by saying this. It's just, you're really talking apples and oranges when you're talking Grant County Storm and Mott Regent, Wildfire, New England Public, or these schools, compared to when you drive by Bismarck and go, oh my gosh, look at this. That's a $1 million stadium there. You can't. So it is like I said, it's a step in the right direction. I'd like to see some more. I'd like to see some of the schools just voluntarily move up. Like I said, not New England St. Mary's. Bismarck St. Mary's is a good one. They don't want to be in the middle class for boys basketball and girls basketball. They know they're capable of playing Class A, and they have the advantages of being in a big town. Bismarck is a big town. Bismarck, compared to Turtle Lake or Kidder County High School, you just can't compare them. So again, I hope it's a step in the right direction, and I think you'll start to see, people will say, well, you're just weakening it, or it's a trophy for everybody. And I did have a discussion with somebody that said a trophy for everybody. This is how it existed in 1960s when we had three classes, so it's really not that much different. And when you've got, again, not to pick on your Dickinson Trinity, I mean, what did the boys make? The boys regional championship like 16 or 17 out of 20 years. I mean,
It was.
that's a very impressive run. But you've got good schools there who, the Class B, the way I remember it, and a lot of people remember it, was you had that once in a generation team that came along where you thought, this is the year we're going to make it to state. Southart went to state in 1977 for boys, and I think the girls made the state tournament that same year, or else a year later, 76 or 77, and that was their only time. So Belfield had a nice run in 78, 80, and 86, and since then it's just those memories are long gone for a lot of people. And it would be nice to see some of those Cinderella stories come from out of there again, and see some of these teams make that state tournament.
Yeah, I'm excited to see. I think it will be. I think it's going to be right away. It's going to be, you're going to see a lot of interest. If you have to ask me, I wouldn't be shocked. I think because the other part of it too is I think how long until people start arguing about the higher enrollment schools in in class B. This class C is the 2A 1A that should stay with football, but these it would how soon is it going to be where they say the class, the higher enrollment schools are dominating in class B, and it's not a perfect solution. It was going to happen, and just embrace it and try to make the best out of it. And the team that's just going to go focus on and playing the games is going to win. That's kind of my attitude. Is it's above. You just got to adjust and move on and do your best.
Yeah, 100%. And like I said, you said it's been a long time coming, so it's here. Let's see what happens. And obviously, there's going to be tweaks. I see it. Living in the Wisconsin Minnesota border, we're exposed to. I mean, I work in the Twin Cities. I work in Stillwater during the daytime, and so they've got pony football is a big deal here. Stillwater hockey has a great program. They just can't get past Hill Murray. That's always their stumbling block. Hill Murray and White Bear Lake has a good program too. But we see the same stuff here. They split up hockey here a number of years ago, boys and girls hockey, A and AA. Everybody knows the good teams play AA. You got a school in Duluth, suburban school in Duluth, who's they play in the A class. They've been in the state tournament like 9 or 10 years in a row. I know they made the state championship, I think, 7 years in a row. And granted that now their excuse was, well, we lost the state championship 7 years in a row. My argument would be, well, you're the only school that's made it from the tournament from your region. Now you're a Duluth suburban school, and you're playing teams that have, barely enough kids to form a line, or a line and a half of kids out there for hockey. So it's like, just move up. You're talented enough. Your schedule is based. Think of it as a small town school in North Dakota playing Class A competition. So think of it, if we put a brand new high school in Freiburg, and we built a high school in Freiburg again. And Freiburg is playing the Williston Coyotes, Dickinson Midgets, Bismarck Demons, Minot Magicians. And let's say that they win the new WDA, but now they're going to drop down and play Class B for the tournament. That's essentially how hockey works in Minnesota. It's like, well, if you're going to schedule the big boys and big girls to play the sports, why are you sandbagging it in the lowest class? You're really not. You're not doing the kids any favors by having them compete at the lowest denominator. You're telling them, well, we're going to feast on it. We're going to play the hard teams in the regular season, and then we're going to go beat the little sisters of the poor in the tournaments. And that's not right. I'm sorry if I use an outdated expression. But that's what I mean. You want the kids to. When I played competitive softball and broomball, we wanted to play at the highest level possible, not be the champions of the worst league. And so, that's just ideally that's how it should be. And hopefully that, again, a step in the right direction.
Yeah, and I'm curious to see what other co-ops dissolve.
Mhm.
But I think right now, I think really maybe there's a few other on different parts of the state, but right now I think it's only Belfield and Southard that have kind of dissolved. But now you grew up in Belfield and Southard. What doing some of the research here on some of these teams, and I'm just kind of scrolling through your page where it's got like I didn't know the Elgin's original team was the Elgin Dutchmen.
Correct.
What were some of the I guess they're probably all interesting to you, but do you have any that of the ones that you've done so far that have really stuck out that you remember that like cool stories or interesting stories they were able to tell you about the former schools?
Oh gosh, the stories are so amazing from people, and people come about to me, and they sometimes they wait for their school to be posted. I've had people tell me like, "Oh gosh, I've waited a year for you to get to do this one," and I said, "Why didn't you call me sooner? Why didn't you send me a message sooner?" Because there is no magic database that I just go to and type in the Google and look this up and find a logo, and it's not that easy. Some of these were hand drawn logos where the only existence left is in a yearbook somewhere, if I'm lucky enough to get a gym wall photo. So that's the hard part. So I encourage people, if you haven't seen something that you want to see, send me a message and help me out. Find me a letter jacket, find me the school colors, and go from there. But the two that I remember that were really great stories, the 1956 and 1957 state T champion Ulsan Broncos. I had never heard of that town or the team. Had to dig around and look it up, and ended up talking with a guy named Ray Herbal, who lives just outside of Fargo, I think in Mapleton. Just a funny guy, and he was a junior on the sophomore and junior on the team. He made it sound like he was a bench warmer. He was actually a very vital part of the team that won the second of the back-to-back tournaments. But he mentioned a game that they played. They played a scrimmage against the Class B powerhouse, Rolla Bulldogs. And in those days, C was not allowed to play. You weren't allowed to bump up and bump down to play a competition. So the coaches had arranged a scrimmage at the Rolla gym. And the parents of the kids in Ulsan wanted to know if there were tickets available. And the coach had told them, no, there were no tickets. This was a closed scrimmage. The coaches, players, and a couple of referees. So the kids they came to the bus. They took the bus to Rolla, and they were greeted by a packed gymnasium in Rolla. And the way Ray told the story, the coach was not happy. This was supposed to be a closed gym. There's a couple hundred people in there. I guess the gym kind of overlooked the court, so that's really an intimidating crowd. And the coach went to the other coach and said, "Hey, coach, I thought we agreed to this. This was a closed scrimmage." And the Rolla coach pretty much said, "Well, what do you want me to do? The fans are here." And oh well. And I Ray's telling the story, and I said, "Ray, this is a great story." I said, "So I just cut to the chase. What happened?" I said, "How was this a barn burner game?" And he said, "Oh gosh, no. We ran them out of their own gym."
Oh, that is funny. It's that I wonder how many more stories are similar to that where it wasn't because you don't really think about things like where it's like, oh, just schedule it, because I think now in the new classes where you're going to see a little bit of some crossover between A and B playing each other just based off of regionality, easy to schedule games. But I'd be curious to see how many of those are there or that have happened like that. But and looking through here is you've got a few here. So like the Assumption Abbey Cubs. And with my dad being from Richardson, and he went I think he was at the Abbey from like K through 5, and I've been for years I've been trying to find a way to get into that gym because he's told me about games he went to when there was a college there, and just to see it because I'm similar. I nerd out over like old gyms and different things like that. Like a while back, I for work I have to occasionally go to Gulva, and my dad he told me, he's like, you got to go check out the gym. It's pretty interesting, pretty cool. So I go to the school and I knock on the door, and they look at me and they're all confused. Some guy, and my regular day job is I'm a sales rep for Pepsi. Some random guy in a Pepsi car shows up and asks if he can go see the gym. He's like, well, I'll go ask the lady who has the key. And I kind of told her, I was like, I know this is a weird question, but I've been told I have to go check out the gym here in Golva. Is there any way that you would let me go see or anything like that? Just hands me the key.
Yeah.
And I have it on our Facebook page. I shared it, and I go in, and like right when you walk in, there's the big Golva Tiger logo, and then you go in, and there's like two rows of bleachers on each side. There's the auditorium, like the old school. The gym or the locker rooms basically doubled as bathrooms.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the upstairs, because I think they're still elementary school. They have like a little weight room, but it looked like it was labeled the Tiger Den, and it was caged, and it was extremely cool. Or another one too is the old Rame gym, which my dad works at Pepsi as well, and we went to the game. We had to go there. I was helping him with something, and he always said, and I remember looking at pictures, like you could just kind of see it was kind of just some random weird way it was set up. And I asked my dad, I was like, have you ever been there? Have you played in there? He's like, oh, it's cool. You got to go check it out. So it worked out when I was in college helping out. We went there, and turns out the school was open. And so we go walk in, and it's the smallest gym. And I had Adam Palczewski on from Scranton, who was on the 2000 Scranton Miners team that made it to state, and he was told stories about that as well. And just I can about imagine if when they were good, how ruckus that place would have been and how hot that gym was.
Yeah, there's some great stories out there. And I tell you what, since you mentioned Galva, the next time you take a trip out there, stop at Sentinel Butte on the way back. And
yep,
and check out get Rick Olson at the service station there at Rick Olson.
He's actually one of my customers. Yep.
Is he really? Yep. I bet he was. I ask him to let you into the gym there. It's like walking into the set of Hoosiers. Honest to goodness, I was there in 2020, and I asked him to let me in there, and he did. And I shot hoops for about a half an hour. And honestly, I was waiting for Gene Hackman to yell at me out there. I mean, it was just that cool. It's literally like it's in a time warp. It's literally right out of 1960s. I mean, you got the old fashioned clock and scoreboard up top. It was amazing. It was really a treat to be able to say, hey, I nailed a 3-pointer at the Sentinel Butte gym.
Yeah, I go there next Friday, so that's I'm gonna have to to do that now. I'll clip this part and I'll send it, show him it for you, Scott.
Yeah. Tell him I said hi, and yes, definitely get in there. And Rick's just a great guy. Just another great story to stop out there, and that's part of the fun too, is just meeting people along the way here. I mean, it's really something. I was back in May for a visit home. My mom's still around north of Belfield, and I rolled into Belfield probably about 12:30 in the morning, and stopped in at the gas station there. And the clerk at the counter, he took, I don't know what I had, a pizza or whatever I had, and he kind of looked at me for a second, and he said, "Hey, you look kind of familiar." He said, "You don't happen to be that shirt guy on Facebook, do you?" And I said, "Yeah, actually I am." And he said, "Wow, really?" He said, I thought you were an urban legend." He said, "I followed you a while back." And I'm like, this dude's from Belfield, but I've never seen him in town here. How could he have never stopped in here? He said, "I don't think he really exists." And I said, "Well, I don't live here anymore. That's the deal." But it was funny that I had a winter hat on. It was cold. I was bundled up in a jacket. So I gave him credit. I said, I threw him a couple of can koozies. It was just fun. And I said, you have no idea what you got yourself into here now that your kids are going to school at the Bantams, because it's going to be a whole different ball game.
Yeah, it is. But I kind of went off on a tangent here. But how did you come about the Assumption Abbey Cubs?
Oh yeah. Sorry to get. I'm half Italian. We get sidetracked too, and I'm just lucky to. I'm on camera, so I don't wave my hands around, because we're known for that too. But the Assumption Abbey Cubs, I've literally tried to go through the schools that are just no longer around, and that was so Richardson Rebels I knew about as a kid. Taylor Redbirds. I think I was at a Region 8 tournament game in the early 70s. I couldn't have been more than 6 or 8. my dad met one of his friends there because Belfield was in the tournament. And I know Belfield lost because we didn't go back. So they must have lost in the first round. But I remember Richardson taking the court, and I think they played right after Taylor. So again, even at that age, I knew the Taylor Redbirds and Richardson Rebels. I thought was just the coolest name, and they were like the New Orleans Saints, black and that Vegas gold, and that really was just
Yep.
in the '70s. You're like that. That was just we're so used to red and white, blue and white, that sort of stuff. So I kept digging around, and I knew Assumption Abbey had some history there, and did some digging.
And I don't mean to interrupt here, but so this was a while back. I was over at my parents' house, and my dad brought out his old yearbooks, and they had a student that played they had a whole Rebel mascot. He had the whole mustache and everything. I saw it for the first time, and it was I looked at that. I was like, you had a mascot, and he shows the pictures of a packed gym, because in the early 70s, that was when they had a really good team.
Mm-hmm.
They made it to state. I think they were undefeated both years and ended up losing in the first round, and they ended up taking fifth. But yeah, they had a guy that would dress up as a Rebel, had like the old big mustache, like the Pistol Pete from like the Oklahoma State mascot. It was similar to that, but that was that's the Richardson story I had to say.
No, thanks for interjecting that, because these pieces all tie together, and I couldn't figure out why Richardson had such a late start high school wise. And I was put in touch with somebody at the Abbey, and really had them reach, when they called me back, and they're very gracious to help me out. And, when there was the Catholic school in Richardson, they people really felt there was no need for a public school in Richardson. That's why Abbey stuck around for so long. And in the era of the court decisions and separation of church and state, when the writing on the wall for Abbey High School really became when Richardson was kind of when people just, we can't be forced to send kids to a Catholic school. And so that was really, like I said, the writing on the wall. When they opened Richardson School, it was just a matter of time before the Abbey School closed. But really, really an interesting story. In fact, the first backboards used at the Richardson High School were purchased from the Abbey High School, because
interesting.
So they were literally transported there after they didn't need the gym anymore. They transported them over there. So I understand. I think the Abbey uses it for storage, which is typically what they do, but you could still see the gym floor in there. So it's kind of a neat story. It'd be really nice to see to see if it was currently today. You could imagine like what would an Assumption Abbey Cubs versus Richardson Rebels game look like? It would be a packed house. It was like New England and New England St. Mary's back in my day. Those were the Catholic school kids that grew up with the public school kids, and you're playing kids that you're friends with, and literally pretty much right across the street from each other. Strasburg and Emmett Central were the same way. Same thing. These schools are literally a block apart from each other, and big rivals. So it must have been really just the heyday. If kids could only see today what we had in the 70s and 80s, and I'm sure even for me going back in the 50s and 60s, how it must have been even better, because there were even more teams and more towns.
Yeah. And back in like the 50s and 60s, I can't remember the exact year, but I saw the in some other cool stories, like the Epping Eagles where they took on, I believe it was it Hillsborough? And I can't remember the exact. Yeah. And did you get any good stories like that when you did the Epping Eagles?
I'm very, I didn't get any really good story. Well, not a good story, but I learned more of that history. I didn't realize that prior to that state tournament game, they set a state record. I think they lost 91 straight games before they had a team that really had some success. And that 91 straight games, their win was against the Williston JV squad. So hardly I'm sure it was a relief to get that off their back, but that's just a great story. And I was too little to know about that team, but it really is, it's North Dakota's Class B urban legend, because everybody who knows something about Class B basketball in North Dakota knows about Epping. And most of the time their response will be, oh yeah, the year that Epping won state. Remember when they won state? Or Epping, the little team that won state? And you have to remind people and say, well, they didn't. they're, and I jokingly put that on my page in the Epping comment where I put they're the only second place state champion in state history. And I mentioned to somebody, it's like those moments in sports time that get frozen there, and I equated it with the 1975 World Series. Nobody remembers that World Series for anything other than Carlton Fisk, waving the ball fair. Remember, he hit the home run, the epic home run in Game 6. Nobody can tell you like what happened in Game 7. The Red Sox were shut out in Game 7, and the Reds won Game 7 and were World Series champions. And everybody kind of forgets that, and it's like with Epping too. But one of the cool things that happened about it was, I think it was a niece or nephew, maybe a daughter of one of the Vinger boys or the cousins. I think there were 3 of them that played on that Epping team. All those guys got shirts from me, and then they wanted them personalized with their number on the back. And one of them was Vinger 15. I can't remember which brother it was. And they posted a picture of them on Facebook, and he's got him and his son and his grandson with the Epping Vinger shirt. And I'm like, wow, this guy's a North Dakota sports legend, and he's wearing a T-shirt that I sent to him. It really is kind of cool, and that makes it fun. Another story, Dennis Beck from the 1984 Linton Lions team. Linton, I think, was the state football champion that year, and and Dennis was a football player, but he was just a bad dude. Dennis was bald. He had a headband to help him out with his sweat, but he just the coolest looking guy. You see this guy in the state tournament, like, man, I wouldn't want to play that guy. That guy just looks mean. Just a great player, and they rolled to the Class B tournament in 1984. And when I did the Linton Lions, Dennis had messaged me and said, I need a Linton Lions shirt. He didn't play for Linton HMB, as they're known now. He wanted a Lions shirt. And I said, well, yeah, give me your address and I'll send it to you. He said, no. I want you to stop in Bismarck the next time you're home, and I'll come and meet you in person. And I was like, really? Dennis Beck wants to meet me. That's kind of cool.
Yeah. That the guys you grew up watching, and now they want pictures with you. It's crazy.
It's I couldn't. Cat Perkins has a shirt from me, and I've got a picture with Cat Perkins. And one of my friends said, I sent him a picture. He said, oh wow, you know Cat Perkins? I said, no, Cat Perkins knows me.
Yeah, that's the right attitude to have. And another one too is because I believe in that Epping Hillsborough game. I believe I watched. I knew of them, and I watched it. It was in that documentary that they did in the 90s about the bee. It was about the One Shining Moment, I think it was called.
Okay.
I don't know if you've seen it, but then in Jeff Kolpak, he wrote a book a while back called North Dakota Tough, and it talks about different stories. Have you heard of the team, the Elbow Woods team that got they got the state championship? They didn't get it right away when they won it, but they got honored as it like just recently here. I can't remember, but it was a town that got that is now under Lake Sakakawea. Have you gotten to do any research on that one or a shirt for that one yet?
I have, and I'm still working on that. So some of these, especially with the American Indian tribes, I really want to be respectful of this and make sure that they're, I don't want to be viewed as a grifter or a guy who's making money and just, yes, I live in Wisconsin. I come back a lot. This is done okay. It's a ton of work for me to do this and put this together. I do give a lot back to my home state, and I want people to know that and realize that. So, I've reached out to the tribes. There is a connection to Belfield with the Elbowwoods team in that Harold Oderman from Belfield. He passed away a number of years ago, but he played on that team. And I didn't know that. When I was a kid growing up, it's just Harold Oderman is just the guy at the Catholic Church who sings the loudest on Saturday Night Mass. And just a wonderful family. But his son Jim talked to me at my dad's funeral last summer and asked me about Elbowwoods, and I said yes. So we keep trying. I want to, like I said, I want to talk with the tribal members and the council and just see if they're willing to, if this is something that they're okay with. Especially with those native mascots and logos, I understand that there are two sides to those. Some people like them, some people do not. And I like to respect people on both sides of those issues. And, like somebody, for example, I've been asked a number of times to do the Dickinson State Savages, and no, I won't touch that. I'm not interested in cartoon images of that sort of imagery. But Elbow Woods was just a fascinating story, and it's unfortunately for a lot of those guys, they were already gone by the time they were honored. And I know memories get fuzzy. I'm pretty sure it was like almost 20 years ago that they were handed that, because I think it was 1942, and I think it was the 20-year anniversary or 50 years of that team where they were honored as officially put in the record books as the state champion. And really nice to see them get that honor and to have that bestowed on them, and well deserved for them, and a sad story of what happened in that town and that community. And yes, believe me, that's on my probably top 5 to-do list. If I can just get somebody from the tribe there to give me a call back and say, yes, we'd love to see this happen, and have people wearing around an old Elbow Woods Warriors t-shirt, and really honor the history and the heritage of that area.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I have the book here. I'll have to look and see when they were officially given the state title, but that's one of just a incredible story. And you see so many of these, and when you come back, because now that you're a recurring guest, you have to come on anytime I ask you. That's how this works.
I totally do it. I'm totally game. You bet.
Well, and thinking about it now is we've just gotten to know each other here. But what my next idea is try to break this up into regions as far as regionality, like a northwest corner, a southwest corner, southeast, southwest, and on. But there, so you said that there were there's a couple other here, is the Wahpeton Wops. So was that one that you just did yourself, or were they actually called the Wops?
Oh, they were actually the Wops. And
really? How long ago was this?
Oh gosh, they probably changed that when I was in college, maybe 90, somewhere in the mid 90s, early 90s. They changed that. And now to be fair, so a couple of things. I don't design the logos myself. I have a couple of artists that I work with. One primarily who did most of them. I've taken on a second and sometimes a third one, who I have to work really hard to find people who kind of get the spirit of what I'm trying to do. So the Wahpeton W was a common one. The mobster with the Tommy gun there, that was my own imagination. I wanted Scott to draw that one up, and so that was more for me. I'm half Italian, so it was kind of like I wanted to do something funny. But their nickname was the Wops, and obviously people, again, they're two sides of a story. Like, I'm half Italian. That name doesn't bother me at all. It's kind of a joke. It's something my college buddies would call me a wop or a dago, and to me that was no big deal. To my grandfather, it was a huge deal, and would probably wind up with you getting punched in the face if you were to call him that. And so again, I respect the fact that both people, but it really is. It was never meant as a derogatory thing against Italians. It was short Wahpeton Wops. You're Wahpetown. So. Sometimes you wonder, like, did we really go too far with some of these nicknames, or we're just scrubbing everything from the history books, and now everybody's got to be generic Huskies or Panthers or whatever, Cubs or Cougars, and it's like, well, why do we bother having nicknames at all? Let's just be the town, I guess, if that doesn't offend anybody. And so it's yeah, I mean, what do you do? But there's so many. North Dakota had a lot of great names and great nicknames, and it's just fun to be able to bring part of that back. I've got a really good one coming up tonight it won't be tonight by the time on your podcast, but at 7:00 tonight, I have a really, really good one up by, I won't give it away, but it's Killdeer, Dunn Center, Dodge area. So my Facebook page will have it at 7:00 Central tonight.
Well, so this won't be released till Monday morning, yep. So you can yeah, so it'll already be up. So you are free to share this one. I'm interested. I'm rubbing my hands with excitement. I want to hear this, because I know that there's the Halliday Wolverines, yep. The Killdeer Cowboys. I don't know about these other towns.
Okay, well, Werner Warriors. That's who you're going to see it tonight. The Werner
Who is
Warriors.
It?
Werner, Werner. Werner Warriors.
Oh,
there might be 12 people left in Werner. At one time, they had a high school.
And I didn't even know that was a town.
and they made the 1938 state tournament, the Consolidated League. So back until the Class C came about in, I believe, 1952 or 53. I thought I had my sheet here, but I don't. Yeah, here we go. 1950. So before that, you had the Consolidated League was formed in the early 1900s, 1917, about 1921, I think. North Dakota had a one class system. And so basically, your Fargo schools in Bismarck were competing with everybody. Petersburg, Michigan, these towns don't have 30 people in them, and yet they're playing the same class as a Bismarck or Fargo. And so the Consolidated League was formed to really get the small schools, and that's where the names, where I look at that. This was put together. The history of that tournament was put together by a graduate from Mott in the early 60s, and goodness, it's amazing. I look through some of these towns. You're right. I'm at the tipping point of being an old timer myself, and I look through there and think Webster 1960 state tournament. I have no idea where that is, where Webster, North Dakota is. Haynes out there in the southwestern corner, 1961 state Class C tournament. That's down there by Scranton, but the old railroad line down there. There were several little towns there that, Bucyrus had a school, Gascoigne had a school. You're like, goodness, there's nothing there. So when you're a kid today driving around there and thinking there's nothing there, imagine what it would be like in the 1950s, and you're taking, I don't know what you're driving to. Maybe you're taking a horse there from, Bucyrus to Gascoigne for the basketball game. Just those gyms must have been absolutely packed for games. And it's, I hate to say, but it's a state tragedy that these towns are all dying. And so if there's some way where I just make people feel good about seeing I can't say South Hard Eagles anymore, but yeah, a Rain Pirate shirt or a Regent Ranger shirt, Reader Rockets. It's if that puts a smile on somebody's face and reminds them of some simpler times, then I'm honored to be a part of that.
Yeah, and for nerds like me, where you just scroll and it's like I didn't even know like Amadon, I didn't even know they had a team or a school, or Marmouth, because this was a while back. We were I was on a we were we were going to a coaches clinic down in Denver, and we were driving and we were talking about, we somehow got on the topic about Marmouth, and we were trying to figure out if they ever had a school. And I texted my dad, asked if he knew what Marmouth school was, but we figured out that there was the gym was upstairs in like their theater, and it was already condemned when he was in high school, which he graduated in 78. And then like 2 weeks later, you post on here is the Marmouth Longhorns. Yeah.
That's funny. And there is no rhyme or reason how these are posted. I can honestly tell you, somebody asked me once, what's the secret of your success with this? And I said, I really think it's that I treat every single one of these schools like I'm an alumni from there. Like I want them to look their very best. And I want to do that. If there's an inaccuracy somewhere, or I posted something that's not quite factual, I'm dealing with some people that I talk to that are 75, 80, 90 years old in some cases. They just can't remember. The guy that helped me with the air rifles colors, he couldn't remember if their colors were Kelly green and gold or forest green and gold, essentially University of North Dakota versus NDSU. And so my art guy for that one, he designed both of them. He had two different logos with slightly different green colors. And I texted him to this guy, and he said, Kelly Green. We were Kelly Green. He said, I know it when I saw it. So it was in his head, but he had to picture it. He said that was our logo, the two muskets that are intersecting. That was the air rifles. And just another great story. Those come up out of every single school. So it's kind of, each one of these takes me anywhere from 2 to maybe 15 hours to put together, because I've got to get in touch with people, or I've got to do some history myself and research. It's a pretty challenging effort sometimes to really come up with some stuff. And so it's when I do finally post one, like the Werner one tonight, it's like, wow, there's another piece of history that we've forgotten about. Like you said, you didn't know where Werner was. You maybe you've heard of it, but you would think, well, gosh, that town had a school. Yep, they did at one point in time. And in fact, some of their Halliday's best players from the teams that wound up in the state tournament, I think in the 60s, were from Werner. So you still have those town rivalries of, going on even after then.
Yeah. And just still scrolling here, the Grassy Butte Grasshoppers. I didn't know they had a school either. It's
That's a total joke. Some of those I throw in for fun.
oh,
So Grassy Butte had an
okay,
elementary school. I did that one for fun. I went to church at Grassy Butte as a kid, so I wanted a shirt that said
oh, gotcha.
I wanted a shirt. So Fairfield Ranchers is another one. Never was
Okay,
the Fairfield Ranchers is a little dedication to my dad. That was
oh, okay.
so that logo was designed to look like him, and that's how I remember my dad leaning up against the fence post with a little piece of hay in his mouth and just chewing on it. For whatever reason, you chewed on it. I don't know why you would just grab a piece of straw and chew on it. So some of those are for fun. 99% of those are as accurate as I can get them, and they're not. I'm not trying to recreate a hand drawn logo from 1974. I want something that would think and kind of honor the history, but bring it into the future. And like our Belfield Bantam, that's not the logo we had in the 70s. We had some sort of Bantam with kind of a wrestling unitard on, and it looked cool in the 80s. It doesn't look so cool now, and so some of those are updated. And my friends tell me, they're like, that's the best that logo's ever looked. There must be 500 Bantam shirts around the country. And it really was fun to see. Never in my wildest dreams did I think the Belfield Bantams would ever exist again. So to know that they're coming back this fall is really going to be something special. So I'll give you another good story if you scroll around and look around. The Hannah Legionnaires. Hannah was nicknamed the Legionnaires after the American Legion there donated some funds to buy their jerseys. And so to honor the Legion, the team was called the Legionnaires. And when I put that logo together, I wound up working with a guy who lives coincidentally like 10 miles from where I'm at now. I'm in Hammond,
Oh,
Wisconsin.
yep.
He lives in New Richmond. So which one are you looking at? How do you spell it?
The Hannah Legionnaires. I found them.
Yep. And how is it spelled in that
Yep.
picture? How's Legionnaire
L
spelled?
E Legionnaires.
Okay, so it's got two N's. So that
Yep.
was the second version that I did. So when I put together the logo, that was the one I showed to my contact in New Richmond, Wisconsin, is where he lives, and he told me this looks great except for Legionnaires is spelled wrong, and I said no, it's not. It's got two N's in it. He said no, it doesn't. He said I remember it from our gym wall and our books at school and our yearbooks. It's Legionnaires with one N. And I said, there's this little thing out called Google you should check out. Google Legionnaires. He did, and he said, oh my gosh, my English teacher would roll over at her grave. We've spelled it wrong our whole lives. They literally have the name spelled wrong in the old school and on the gym wall. They have a little Facebook group, and he said, you've destroyed our childhood because the jerseys were wrong. Everything was wrong. Everything we were taught about our name was spelled wrong. And I said, well, what do you want to do? He said, we can't have two N's in that name. We need T-shirts with just one N. We got to spell it the way we spelled it. Even the cheer, I guess, was Legionnaires. And I said, you can't just add another N into there. I said, fine. For you guys, I'll do a special set of shirts with just one N. So you guys could be the misspelled Legionnaires. And I had a relative of somebody whose dad was on that Legionnaire team. He was I believe a principal or superintendent at another school. He wanted the correct spelling because he couldn't wear around a T-shirt that had the incorrect spelling. So there's two different versions of that shirt out there. But that's another great story. When I see a picture of the gym and it says the sign above the gym door says "Home of the Legionnaires" and Legionnaires is spelled wrong.
That is awesome. And now I see the St. Bernard Saints. So was that actually a school, or is that one you just did?
Nope, that was our school in Belfield.
Okay,
Belfield's parish center was St. Bernard's Catholic School.
And okay, I did not know that they were. I didn't know that they were actually a high school. When did that school close?
Well, it was elementary school, so it was grades 1 through 8.
Okay.
And I think it was in the 90s when it went to 1 to 6. So I would have graduated from there in 1984. My sister would have been class of 96. I think they were closed by the time she ended up going to school at the Prairie Elementary School in Fairfield. But I think it was around that time, 95, 97, somewhere in there. But yeah, we were proud to be St. Bernard Saints. It was a big deal to be a third grader and play basketball for St. Bernard's. And I couldn't wait. I mean, I loved basketball since I was a kid, and when I knew we could be in third grade and play basketball, that there was, you know, no better feeling than putting on a jersey and representing your school. I think I just thought it was great, and loved every minute of it there. Third grade, fourth grade teams, and then we were fifth and sixth grade teams, and by the end, when you were an eighth grader, you were leading the school. And you mentioned that Galva gym. I think it was our seventh and eighth grade team. I was a seventh grader. We had two seventh graders. My friend Scott Obergewich, who's a teacher at Dickinson Schools.
Oh, yep.
Yep.
I went to I know his son very well. We grew up. We
Okay.
ran cross country together. Actually,
You
Zach.
did.
Yep.
Okay, so I thought you might know that name. Him and we were best friends. The two Scots that played basketball together. So we were seventh graders on the team where we had I think 5 eighth graders, and we went to that Galva tournament and we won the Galva tournament. We cut down the nets at the Galva gym like we won the NCAA championship. And for years those nets were inside the trophy case there at St. Bernard's at what was now the parish center. And I'd still go by even up until about 5 or 6 years ago and chuckle at that. Like, yep, there's the nets from Galva. We cut down the nets at Galva High School. I'm sure I'm sure they came into the school the next day like, hey, we got to have a school board meeting tonight. We need a motion on whether we can spend $6 on new nets. They probably said St. Bernard's a bill.
Yeah. I got a couple more questions, and then we can wrap this up here. So now, if you were in charge of a school, and whether it be what can be any location, what would be the mascot?
Oh,
and have you designed this, or have you already done this, and you already have the logo?
Of any school,
Yeah.
honestly, I wouldn't even know where to start.
It's just a general high school, but just we're more so talking with the mascot.
The mascot,
Yeah.
How about I do this? I really couldn't come up with a logo for an imaginary school. I'll give you like my top 5 from North Dakota. How about that?
Okay. I like this.
If I was gonna pick a name from North Dakota, like what would that be? And these are not in any particular order, so I'm just gonna list random 5, right? Belfield, the Bantams for sure. Bantams. It just people can make fun of you. You're a chicken. You're that logo is just it's one of my favorites. It really was. My art guy. I can't say enough about him when he did that one. But the name Bantams. When you're a Bantam, everybody knows who you're talking about. Rattlers. The other one, Glen Ellen Rattlers, the only one in the state. That just a mean logo and a mean team. I mean, the Gerving boys in the 80s. I mean, they went to state in 85, 87, 88. That 4-year stretch, just an incredible team. And I mean, literally struck fear in the hearts of teams out there. You knew the Glen Ellen Rattlers were probably going to run you out of the gym. Another one, the Brickmakers, same. Obviously the Southwestern flair here, but the Hebron Brickmakers. How many schools in this country have the name Brickmakers? I guarantee you none. There's no way that there's another school with that name. It's just and obviously the Hebron Brick Plant there is just it was the perfect name for the town. You couldn't have any other nickname on there. I'll go southeastern corner this time. That was back to my roots as a kid when I saw that game in 82. I think the Sargent Central Cadets. Just you had the stationary cadet, the royal blue, black and white. Just the guy in the military looking uniform. I just thought that was cool. The cadets, like there weren't a lot of those out there. And what am I at? Is that 3, 4? That's number 4.
I think so, because you have Brickmakers, Rattlers, Bantams, Cadets. Yeah, so you got one more.
Cadets, I got one more. All right, I got to try and mix it up here. How about the Granora Gophers? We'll go with that one. Up in the Northwest.
Was that the 1990? So the 93 state championship they were in?
I think they went in the 90s, and I think they were there
because it was against Jim Kleinsasser. I know that against Carrington.
Okay, I think you're right on that. So that's a little. I think I was in the Twin Cities by then, but they went to state in 82, I think, as well. And it's funny. I can't remember the name of the players, but I remember watching them in the tournament. They had their colors were maroon and gold, but the team had socks that were kind of that candy cane striped socks in maroon and gold. Just an awful look. I mean, just you look at it now, it's like, oh, that's horrendous. But it was a fun team to watch. You couldn't help cheer for them because of that. And I'll throw in a sixth one as a bonus. How about that? The Mackville Blackhawks. That was another great one. It was with a big black hawk swooping down on their court, and they made the state tournament in the early '80s as well. And I know that the announcers, back in those days, they had some trouble pronouncing that one, so they were kind of in the game, weren't really sure. I remember them saying like Mickville or Mackville. They Mickville, so you would hear them say Mickville. Well, then they started just kind of going Blackhawks, and by halftime, somebody had found their way to the podium or the stand there and corrected them so that they could pronounce it correctly. But the Mackville Blackhawks was another great name and logo.
Okay, gotcha. Now that since you did five, I have to do five, and I kind of just was scrolling here. So mine very similar. The Elgin Dutchman. That's
Yep.
the first mascot I've ever seen that's been called the Dutchman.
That's a good one too.
That one, and then similarly the Hebron Brickmakers. I like that too because Hebron is nicknamed the Brick City, and I always like and appreciate when teams their mascots resemble what the town is known for.
Correct.
Or find a way to kind of honor what makes the town the town. Hebron Brick City, Hebron Brick Company, and then similar to you, Bantams. It has to be the only Bantams in the country. I don't know if there is any more. I don't know if you know of any more, but that it's such a unique name is the Bantams. And then now I just had it here, but it was the Valiants.
Oh, Central Valley. Okay.
Yes, Central Valley, the Valiants. Being a Michigan fan, in the fight song, "Hail to the Victors," it's the Victors Valiant.
Yep.
You have to go with that.
That's the best fight song
And
in
then,
the country.
Yep, exactly. You nailed it. And then the Hustlers, the Hope Hustlers,
Yep.
and it's I just because I love the logo, the fighter jet. The F-18 Top Gun 2 just came out last year, so I maybe still because of that, but that you just don't see the nickname the Hustlers.
No, and to be fair, I mean that school was around a long time. That was not the original Hustler logo, obviously being in the 50s. I mean things had changed. They just kind of had it for the boys team in the prior to that era, the 1950s. They just used kind of a guy dribbling a basketball, little skinny cartoon character dribbling a basketball who looked like he was in motion. He was hustling. That's what he was doing. Yeah. So it's kind of neat to see how they change into that. So yeah, I really like that one too. That's another good one.
Yeah, and absolutely. And then so my last question is how if people want to go and they want to order some shirts. Father's Day is coming up, so it'd be a great present, whether it be a koozie or a shirt for all the dads out there, or if you just want to get one yourself. Because when we're done recording, I might have to place an order here. So how does that process work? Can they just message you and say, "Hey, I want a large Freiburg Panthers shirt," or how is it more complicated than that? How does the process work?
It is more complicated than that. So I get asked this all the time. So great question. It's a lot of work goes into it. Typically, I pre-sell the shirts. So every logo that's posted, like starting tonight, I'll have about 30 days for the Werner Warriors folks to find me. And I need a contact in that town, and I've got the perfect guy. I've got a guy who lives in Werner who's going to share that with everybody, and people can go in there and order. So, so I don't. It's not as easy as just calling me up and saying, "Hey, can I get a Rain Pirates shirt?" I might get lucky. I might have a leftover. Sometimes my more popular schools, if I get an order of, say, 49 Rain Pirates shirts, that's what I sold, I'll order an extra 2 or 3 because I'll probably get somebody who will message me and say, "Do you have any of those left?" So sometimes you get lucky. I pull a rabbit out of a hat and like, boy, you get a shirt within 3 days. And you think, wow, this guy's really good. It's just luck. So now if somebody stumbles across me and said, "Gosh, I really wanted a Dunn Center Trojan shirt, but you did those 3 years ago, so that's long gone." No, that's not the case at all. I can always do more. I just need to get about 12 to 15 people interested in doing it. So and then it's really up to you. It's really grassroots. If you're interested in a particular shirt, then you got to find some buddies. Find some old classmates, find some teammates, find some people in the town that are just interested. And that's one thing I learned. You don't necessarily need to be a graduate of Sentinel Butte High School to want a Sentinel Butte shirt. Those people there had a lot of pride. And I asked a guy once when I first did that. It's a lot of trial and error. I never know what's going to happen. I might get 3 orders. I might get 200. I literally never know. But Sentinel Butte, the guy that called me on that one was Ben Murphy, and he said, "Look, I'll buy 20 of those." And I said, "Okay, well, I might sell 25. I might sell 5 more, so I'll do them." And I did. I wound up with 85 orders for Sentinel Butte for a school that closed in 1960 something. And I asked a guy from Washington. He lived in Washington now. I said, "Look, I scrolled your Facebook page. Why on earth would you be interested in this?" And I said, "You went to Beach High School." He said, "Yep, I went to Beach High School. That's not my hometown. I'm from Sentinel Butte, North Dakota, and now I get to wear a shirt that says Sentinel Butte on it." And that's a cool thing. So I don't have a website. You to set up a shopping cart where you drop and drag, and I want this order like Amazon. It's $3,000 or $4,000 to set that up. I don't make any money selling 25 shirts if I'm spending $4,000 setting up a website with a shopping cart system. And it's also not as easy as printing up one shirt tomorrow when you want a New Leipzig Tiger shirt. It's got to be the perfect storm. So that I do my best to keep it cheap and reasonable. And I ask people, like, if they think, hey, $25 is a lot for a t-shirt, it is. But think about it. You're one of 17 people wearing a DeMorris Longhorns t-shirt in the world, right? What if you go to Shields and Bismarck, you'll spend $40 on an NDSU Bison t-shirt without batting an eye, right? And they make those. There's 10,000 of those on the rack. Like, it's a lot of work to put these together, and sometimes the art on them. Starkweather Storm Kings. If you check that one out, that's another great one. Shoot, that should be top. That should be top 5. I gotta kick someone out of that.
I saw that one too. That is a pretty cool logo as well.
And that one was drawn by a student in the early '80s. Who actually found out my page, and I sent him a free t-shirt. I said, I don't steal anybody's stuff. You were the inspiration for that design. But that took my art guy 6 hours to redraw that one. So it's not like these are 15-minute jobs. That took a lot of time. That's a lot of work going into a school that sold maybe 50 shirts, so it's, but yeah, the easiest way to get a hold of me, I tell people you can find me on Facebook at Throwback Shirt Guy. You can email me, throwbackshirtguy@gmail.com. You can text me, call me, whatever you got to do to get a hold of me. I don't care. Run me down on the interstate. You see me driving home sometime, and you see my GMC with the Throwback Shirt Guy sticker on the side. Honk your horn, pull me over. I don't care. I'll talk hoops all day. We could be in the middle of nowhere, at the rest stop and steal. I'll talk.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So Throwback T-shirt Guy on Facebook as well. So, Scott, I can't thank you enough for the.
Throwback
go ahead.
Throwback Shirt Guy.
Or Throwback Shirt Guy. Yep. Throwback Shirt Guy. Yep. Okay. And I'll try. I'll try to share a link here when I post it out, or tag you in it as well, so you can share it. But Scott, this was a lot of fun. I think I have something with my idea that we try to break it down into regions and talk about these teams the next time you come on. So we will. Yeah, and so we'll have to do that next time. We'll see down the road as far as schedules and stuff goes. But thank you again, and we'll talk to you next time, Scott.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Dylan. And again, I appreciate the opportunity, and I really appreciate what the people of North Dakota have done. I don't live there anymore, but I haven't forgotten my home state, and I'll be back soon.
Yeah, and it's cool to see it. The nerds like I said earlier when we started, the nerds like me learning about these towns, learning these stories is cool. It's like it's a museum on the internet.
It is. It's a lot of fun. So very, very humble and very honored to be bringing back a part of it. Dylan, I appreciate it. This is a lot of fun.